The Stanley Cup Parade has come and gone, and there was so much to celebrate. How much fun was it? And what's next for the Hurricanes? Well, let's talk about it on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes.
Your Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast, now the number one sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The biggest stage in world soccer is here. Let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started now. I'm your host, Zach Martin, and on today's show, like I said, we'll be talking about the Stanley Cup Parade that was, quite honestly, absolutely electric on Saturday morning going into the afternoon, where they thought crowds are going to get 100,000. Well, they had more than that. And also, too, how about the fact that we also had an extension announcement as well during the rally for Nic Deslauriers? And hey, I called it weeks ago that, hey, I wouldn't be surprised if something does happen. And look at that. And then finally, what's next? And what's now for the Carolina Hurricanes? And really, what's next as well, as we are just days away from the draft, and also free agency is next week. So let's just start off with the parade. And for me, I wasn't able to go to the one in 2006 when they won it the first time. I had to go back home to Florida and stuff like that at the time. So wasn't able to go to that one. Thankfully, this one, we all know, was on Saturday. The Hurricanes won it on Sunday, had a whole week for them just to have fun, party with the cup and all that stuff. They had it on Saturday. And going into that, a lot of, assumptions or a lot of, possibilities of how big the crowd size was going to be. You heard of like 100,000. Like, no, 100, we're expecting 100,000 to hit downtown Raleigh, in between Hillsborough and Fayetteville Street and all that stuff. And, by the state capitol, Raleigh area is going to be crazy. Try to carpool, take the bus, take some trains into downtown, stuff like that. You're like, okay, cool. You'll figure something out because you have free parking, all that stuff. So we talked about last Friday's show. And from just the photos and everything, the videos I saw leading into the parade time, there's people there at 5:30, 6 o'clock even, trying to find the best seats and just kind of just chill and hang out. And I'm like, wow, like, we've heard people tailgate really early, but this was like to another level. When you're talking about you're tailgating 5 hours before the parade even started. And the thing is, the parade didn't really start until 11:30, just because of getting everything set up and ready to go. And then, once once you saw that, it just kept packing in, even like during the rally point down by, the city center and, where the Marriott was, where the players are going to walk through and stuff like that, where even media was set up. It was just a madhouse. Like, you're talking on the sides, you're talking at least 10, 11 people, 10, 11 rows deep. Crowds are past like the giant walk area and the Jimmy Johns on either sides. Those were just packed out to the gills. Everyone's just kind of ready and stuff like that. And even the sidewalks were, talking to, Mike Maniscalco, Shane Willis, talking to Hanny Yates for a little bit too. Just talking about people who after the parade, and they were like, I couldn't believe how many people were there. They were talking like 6, 8, 10 rows deep on the sidewalks too. And some people were saying like, yeah, like the narrowest part still had like 3 rows deep, people up in the parking decks, were hanging out the side, or not really hanging out the side, but like, kind of, you see how visible they were in the parking decks near that. And just, churches ringing bells and streamers and just flags and people going crazy. Guys are, spraying the crowds with champagne and stuff like that. I even saw a video where a girl was throwing the guys donuts. Like, that's how crazy this thing was. And, was able to do media stuff after the parade and before the rally on stage, and talking to Sebastian Aho and Rod Brind'Amour, and Rod was just, he was just so grateful, and just the fact that he wasn't really expecting to be this crazy. He thought, oh, we're gonna get a lot of fans. He's like, I didn't expect it to be this much. And I even asked Sebastian Aho, he goes, honestly, I kind of felt, I underestimated a little bit of how crazy it was going to be. And he said that, Jordan Stahl expected to be that crazy, but he's like, yeah, God trust in El Jefe. And Jordan Stahl, you got to listen to him. He knew what he was talking about. And And that's something that was, really said. Jordan Stahl even said, I was trying to explain to the fellas what I knew what was going to happen. And my expectations were so high because I know these Caniacs. I know what they're all about. And I was still blown away. I couldn't even describe how amazing that was. I know everyone else is blown away too. What a showing. What a day. What a moment. And even Rod Brind'Amour also followed up later and said, I'm in shock. It doesn't happen very often, but I was just kind of speechless. I did not expect that. I mean, it was just a wave on wave on wave of enthusiastic people. That's why we do this. It meant so much to so many people, and you get to really see it. It was such a turnout, and I'm so happy we were able to do this for everyone because clearly they were excited about it. And because if you remember the 2006 parade, that thing ended in the parking lot of, at the time, RBC Center. And now you fast forward 20 years, and you're talking crowds 10 deep on either side. People, like I said, in parking decks, and the rally point was just hundreds of people deep, like thousands of people deep. Initially, the day after, I think they said like that Saturday night, they were throwing, they were putting out numbers of like, all right, how big were these crowds were? They were saying 150,000 people showed up to this parade. And like I said, I was talking to some people afterwards who were part of it. And they're like, it felt like way more than 100,000 they were expecting. Like we were all talking about, it could be almost double what that was. And on Monday, before recording this episode, Raleigh police put out the new number. They think there was 180,000 people showed up this parade. Like that's the biggest, like, any type of event in the area. The fact you're talking 180,000 people descended on downtown Raleigh to celebrate this team shows how much that you're talking about with all the rivalries going on of UNC, Duke, NC State. You can, throughout the other schools throughout the state, you get, East Carolina, you got, App State, all these schools, and Wake Forest and all of them. The thing that brings everyone together is the Hurricanes. Like I said, I've heard people coming down from New Jersey were coming to this thing. I know people from other states were coming down here, like Illinois. I drove from here from South Carolina to get up there for the parade because I was doing media stuff, but that was just, I felt it was more than 100,000. I'm like, I would be surprised it was close to 200,000, and it was 180,000 people. And the fact that all the guys were shocked afterwards, like they were just, blown away by it. And the fact that, you got Jordan Martin, hitting a Mr. Svechnikov in the middle of the process. You got, guys ripping off Seth Jarvis's shirt, Andrei Svechnikov's, Rod Brind'Amour's shirt got ripped off a second time in the span of a week from winning the cup to now on Saturday. And just, you got Shane Gostisbehere in the best mullet wig I've ever seen. Everyone's wearing chains. Everyone is just losing it. And just, Jordan Martin with the best stories of like just talking to everything that was going on. And the fact that he called out Rod a little bit too. He's like, I have an attempt on my life for the penalty shot. My coach is going, can anyone take the penalty shot? So it's just like, it was just absolutely amazing. Micah Tripp emceeing it. And the fact you got every guy lifting the cup, you got Eric Tulsky, lifting the cup as well, and the fact that, you got the governor of North Carolina saying there's going to be a stretch of, the area on Edward and Mills by the arena that's now going to be called Hurricanes Highway. And it's just, the whole thing was a culmination of just so many great moments that it's like, I will be like the fact that, all these channels putting the parade on YouTube. I won't be surprised if these things get numbers for a long time now, because everyone just wants to remember that moment of just like, where were you during the parade for the Carolina Hurricanes' second Stanley Cup, and just being, close to the stage and just, the music blaring right there, seeing the guys all get excited, just, and you got the crowd behind them. And then of course we get the biggest storm surge in forever. And it's just the whole day was just great. Got there super early, got there luckily out of there a decent time. Getting out of the parking decks weren't bad at all. You thought it'd be about 2 hours getting stuck in that thing. I think I was out of there in like 15 minutes. Like, that's how great it was getting out of there. And it just shows how great Caniacs were, for the fact that it wasn't too crazy. Nothing was insane. You got in, you got out, you had a great time, and everyone supported, and you had a lot of fun. So that was just great to see. And It was an overall just a great experience. And the fact that, checked it off the bucket list of like being able to things to do is, see the Hurricanes go win a Stanley Cup and now go enjoy a parade. And the fact that there was so much to it as well. Like there's like so much to talk about this parade. Like, how do you fit all of that? Like you can, put this into so many episodes and just talk about this parade. But another thing that was really surprising and something that was really cool to see that I haven't really seen very much. I don't know how many people see this very often, but there was a contract extension announcement. So stick around. We'll talk about Nic Deslauriers and his new deal here in a second on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. ED is way more common than most guys think, and millions of men deal with it at some point. HIMS offers a simple, convenient way to make sure to take care of your health by connecting with licensed healthcare providers online and giving you access to personalized treatment options from the comfort of home. No awkward appointments, no pharmacy lines, just a straightforward process designed to make getting care easier. Taking care of yourself shouldn't feel complicated, and HIMS makes that process feel private and easy to navigate. It's healthcare built around your schedule and your comfort. Between work, family, and everything else going on, finding time for appointments can be tough. Having access to licensed providers online means you can prioritize your health without having to rearrange your entire day. To get simple online access to personalized, affordable care for ED, hair loss, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/lockedonNHL. That's hims.com/lockedonNHL for your free online visit. hims.com/lockedonNHL. Prescription required. See website for details and important safety information. Sildenafil is a generic version of Viagra. Viagra is a registered trademark of Viatris Specialty LLC. HIMS is not affiliated with or endorsed by Viatris. The biggest stage in world soccer is here, and every match feels like it has the potential for a memorable moment. One goal can completely change the energy of a game, shift momentum, and alter the outcome in an instant. That's what makes tournament soccer so exciting, from the opening whistle to the final kick. Now FanDuel is giving fans another reason to stay locked into every match with every goal pays. Bet on a match and get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. More goals means more bonus bets. All you have to do is turn on your token. We've all seen those matches where it scores for what feels like forever, and then one goal completely flips the game. Suddenly, everyone's pressing, the crowd comes alive, and the final 20 minutes becomes must-watch television, and now you get to benefit from each goal scored. From the opening whistle to the final kick, let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Get your daily Carolina Hurricanes fix completely ad-free by joining the Everydayer Club today. Start your 7-day free trial right now and get closer to your team without the interruptions. Click the link in the show notes or the description to claim your free trial today and join us at our Everydayer Club. Now, welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. All right, so we talked about the Stanley Cup Parade as a whole for the Hurricanes and how just crazy it was, how fun, and just the turnout. Like I said, you're talking 180,000 Caniacs descending onto downtown Raleigh to celebrate the Carolina Hurricanes. But in the middle of all that, how about the surprise of the fact that you saw, Eric Tulsky talking, and he said, all these guys that came in have all thanked me for, bringing them in and making them Carolina Hurricanes. And he said one guy who's a pending unrestricted free agent, he said this to me as well. And then he calls Nic Deslauriers over. He goes, all right, we need to take care of this right now. And in the process, Nic Deslauriers comes up, holds the pen up, signs a contract, and screams 2 more bleeping years, meaning that the Carolina Hurricanes have now extended Nic Deslauriers, who they got on at trade deadline day, to a 2-year deal that actually comes out to $1.75 million. But when it breaks down through per season, $850,000 in the 26-27 season and $900,000 in the 27-28 season. So instead of just a normal $875 across the board, they're splitting up a little bit more. But, this is what Eric Tulsky said. Nick has fit in with our locker room and culture from day one when he got to Raleigh. He provides a veteran presence and adds a physical element to our roster. So, yeah, the guy who they got for a conditional pick, which was a 7th rounder in 2027, plays 7 regular season games for the Hurricanes, does get an assist, played 3 minutes and 9 seconds of Game 4 against the Senators, And now the guy who they traded for in deadline day just inked a nice 2-year extension, and he's making $1.75 million total for the next 2 seasons. And he's making like $900,000 in his second year. And you guys heard me talk about this on the show a couple times, throughout the last couple months or so. Don't be surprised if the Hurricanes just extend Nic Deslauriers just to have him in the locker room as a veteran locker room guy, presence, a strategy if they need to throw a big body in there when they're playing some of these other big teams. And I mean, hey, why not? Why not bring in Nic Deslauriers? Like I said, you're not paying him a whole lot of money. Like I said, the most you're paying him is $900,000. Like that's a pretty dang good move, all things considered. And now when you really look at it, every single forward on the Hurricanes roster as of right now are all signed through next season. And the thing too is the Hurricanes still have $11.1 million left on their cap space. And the only guys that aren't signed right now are Mike Riley, who's a UFA, Alexander Nikishin, who's arbitration eligible RFA, and Freddie Anderson. Other than that, you have 5-year defensemen signed, 2 of your goalies, and then you got all 14 forwards signed, essentially. And I know we talked about how, on paper he's making $850 1 year, $900,000 the next year, but in terms of the actual cap numbers, it is $875,000 for Nic Deslauriers. But like I said, that's pretty dang good money. Like I said, every forward is signed. Barring a trade or buyouts or whatever you want to look at, the Hurricanes, the only thing they really could do right now at this point is trade. Unless they want to sign someone for free agency. But the thing is, every single guy is signed. All 14 forwards are signed. They're right now combined making $65.198 million, which takes up 62.7% of the cap. Every forward is signed, which is crazy to think about. Like I said, Nic Deslauriers could be your 13th forward. He could be your 14th forward, however you want to play it out. That's not a bad guy to have in your locker room. Like I said, the guys already love him. They've loved him since day one. He's a great locker room presence. Everywhere he's been, everyone loves Deslauriers. And the fact that he just fit in right away, and you saw from all the videos and the celebrations, and he's just a ringleader of he's the 1-2 punch with Jordan Martinook of being the hype guys. Like now imagine Martinook and Deslauriers being the hype guys in this locker room all of next season instead of just, this 3-month run that the Hurricanes have had with Nick. Now you got him for an entire season and then another whole year after that. Like, I know it's not the massive needle mover a lot of people are already talking about, but you always need a locker room presence guy. And hey, Deslauriers was right there from the jump. You saw how excited those guys were at the parade. Outside of Rod Brind'Amour, Deslauriers, Tulsky, and probably the PR team, I don't think anyone on the team knew that Deslauriers was getting a contract extension. You saw how everyone was really hyped when the announcement was made. And I know a lot of people were questioning, well, did he sign him when he was drunk? No, the official papers were done a while ago. This was just a show of, hey, we're making an announcement. We're going to make this a fun thing. And they did. So like I said, it's not the biggest move. It's not going to be a needle pusher, but in still the end though, it's still a cool thing to have. It's a cool thing to see the fact that you got a guy who's really already well loved in the locker room inside the organization is now sticking with the team for 2 more seasons. And the thing is, it's not breaking the bank. No, he's not making $1 million. Like you still, like I said, you still got $11.1 million of cap space to play with. And in reality, you can go and you could re-sign Mike Riley if you really wanted to, because he played enough games to get his name on the cup this season with the Hurricanes. I think he played like 41, 42 games. I think he played like 42 total. So if Mike Riley wants to come back, sign him to $1.5 to $2 million. That's nothing. That's an easy move to make. However it works out there, Alexander Nikishin, if it's a short-term deal or I say it's a 5x5, why not? That's still a good deal too. And you'll still have more cap space on top of that. So it's not like with $11.1 million, you really only need to sign 2 more guys to your roster if you really think about it. Because as of right now, the Hurricanes, in terms of where their contracts are, they have 32 of possible 50 standard contracts signed. And the thing is, they have on their active roster, they have 21 of 23 spots locked up. If you go and lock up Riley and Nikishin, there's your 23 out of your 23. Your entire roster is set for next season. And that's barring if you go and re-sign, Anderson, or if you trade for someone and stuff like that. You can almost run this entire roster back next year if you really wanted to. I doubt that's what the Hurricanes are actually going to do, but in the end, you have a lot more cap room to play with, but now you add a guy into the locker room that you keep around for another couple seasons. Obviously, you're probably going to move his family down because, you got security for at least 2 seasons. But it's a good veteran presence to have, a great locker room guy, and some physicality to the group too that you're probably going to need this season because you got the biggest target on your back. You're el numero uno. You are the, as Sebastian Aho said, the El Jefe. You're that guy. You're that team right now that everyone's going to be gunning after. So have a guy like that, pretty smart move, win-win in my opinion. Great deal, and it's great to have Nic Deslauriers around in Raleigh for at least another couple seasons. All that to be said, Stanley Cup is won, parade is done, got some extensions, but now what's really next for the Carolina Hurricanes as we're not that far off from the draft and free agency is only like 10 days away. Stick around. We'll talk all about all of that here in a second on a Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. If you guys sweet tooth like I do, you know how tough it is to find that perfect treat without all the sugar. That's why the Fruity Rainbow 5-Hour Energy Shot brings that nostalgic flavor back in a whole new way. Fruity Rainbow 5-Hour Energy Shots treat your taste buds to an explosion of fruity flavor with a tasty caffeine kick. It's a quick, easy way to satisfy that sweet craving while keeping things simple and on the go. It's a zero-sugar treat that's sweet tooth approved and is really convenient. It's a small portable shot that you can grab whenever you need a pick-me-up. Plus, it can be an easy go-to when you're looking for something sweet without going overboard. Get candy-flavored chaos with Fruity Rainbow 5-Hour Energy Shots. Available online at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. Welcome back to a segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. All right, so we talked about the Stanley Cup Parade. We talked about the Nic Deslauriers extension. But now what's next really for the Carolina Hurricanes? And just, what now? Celebrations are done. Well, the parade's done at least, everything like that. But what's really the next big thing coming up really going on? And right now, on Monday, whenever you guys do listen to this, either be right before or after the Hall of Fame announcement for the 26 class. Hopefully Rod Brind'Amour makes it. I don't know how you keep this guy out of the Hall of Fame after what he just did once again. So I'm curious to see how that all plays out. And then you're talking about Friday's day 1 of the NHL draft, and then day 2 is on Saturday, where, that's going to be a big, draw for the Hurricanes really of what's next. Now they do have they only have 4 picks for the entire draft for the Carolina Hurricanes. And you're talking about for the fact that, you're looking at a team that holds the 31st pick of the draft because Ottawa got their first rounder back, so now they got number 32. But the Hurricanes have 1 first rounder, 1 fourth rounder, and 2 sixes. They have no picks in the 2nd, 3rd, 5th, and 7th. As we've seen in the past, the Hurricanes are not afraid to trade out of the first round if they are able to go get more picks. I mean, they traded out of 29 last year, I believe. So they traded out of the 29th last year and got 2 seconds. Honestly, in my opinion, don't be surprised if they do it again. Hopefully it doesn't take 5 hours to learn that from last year's super ridiculously long first round. But if you really ask me, for the fact that you're talking about the Hurricanes have 4 draft picks this year, and they have between the 1st and the 4th, don't be surprised that the Hurricanes straight out of the first round and grab like 2 seconds or a 2nd and a 3rd from someone. Who could that be? Who really knows? But that's just kind of the MO for the Hurricanes. Because you look at next year's draft, they have 2 picks in the 3rd round, and then rounds 1, 2, 4 through 7, they all have a pick there. And even in 2028, they have 2 first-round picks, and then they have a pick from rounds 2 through 7. So the next 2 drafts, they have every round and then some, really. Like you're talking about the fact that you're talking, 16 picks through the next 2 drafts after this year. You're doing a pretty good job of stacking the cupboard of all these prospects going down the road after the 2026 draft. The fact that you hold 4 picks right now, like I said, this is the best. If there's an MO the Hurricanes have, or just the predictability of this roster, of this franchise, this front office, all that stuff, they're going to look for draft capital. They're going to go and try to get more draft picks because Darren York and those guys are really good at finding the prospects. If it's in the CHL or overseas or most definitely Russia, they're not afraid to go get those. So I would not be holding my breath on holding on to the 31st pick if you're Hurricanes fans. Like, unless there's someone they really want to get at 31, I just don't see that being the thing. So that's kind of the next thing right now for the Hurricanes. It's the draft, but I know we'll get closer to that. We'll talk about for Friday's show going into day one of the draft. Talk about maybe potential guys they could look at 31 if they stick there, or, just possibly looking at what could be in round 2 when you're really thinking about it. But in terms of that's kind of the next big thing for the Hurricanes is the draft is coming up on Friday for day 1 and Saturday for day 2, where it's basically rounds 2 through 7. Now, after that, we know we got free agency coming up on July 1st, which as of today on Monday, the 22nd of June, we are looking at exactly 10 days away. It's next Wednesday. So 9-10 days away, somewhere around there. But now it goes into, what does that look like? Who are the UFAs? And I know we'll do more of this next week going into the free agency part of the period after the draft. But just a quick look ahead, you're looking at, a lot of upcoming UFAs. You're looking at Alex Tuck. You're looking at Alexander Ovechkin. Those guys are coming off their deals. Anthony Mantha, John Carlson, apparently he wants to go back out east. Patrick Kane's available. Matt Zuccarello, Victor Arvidsson, Vladimir Tarasenko once again, switching agents. Rasmus Anderson's a UFA. Mason Marchment, which I know a lot of Hurricanes fans wanted to get when he was back with Dallas. He's there. Boone Jenner. There's Eli Tolvanen. There's, a fair amount of guys that are going to be available. It's just, where do the Hurricanes look? Who do they look at in terms of, if we do want to potentially upgrade, where is that upgrade? Defensively, you got Ghost and, Chatfield, they're going to the last year, their contracts next year. You guys got to worry about, Alexander Nikishin. Like I said, all the forwards are basically signed right now, unless they go and buy out someone or bring someone in and then move a guy later down the road. What does all that look like? I know a big name that everyone's going to be looking at is Alex Tuck. He's looking for $10 million or more at 30. Do the Hurricanes want to try to go for a right winger? I don't know. It's like, where do you slide him in at? Who do you move out? Stuff like that. So that's another, like I said, we'll dive more into the free agents going into next week's slate of shows, but that's just a kind of a quick little something to keep in mind of like who's going to be available next week. Because we know last year there was a good number of sign and trades before the actual free agency. Like Mitch Martin went off the board really quick. There's a lot of guys who just jumped off the board right before free agency day on July 1st. And, the goalie market with outside of Sergei Bobrovsky, who apparently wants, a buttload of money. Who knows what that even looks like too. And, the Hurricanes might be fine with going with Kochekov and, Bussy, because they saw what they had with Bussy at least. And, they still have some hopes with Piotr, but maybe that's a potential upgrade depending on who they get. Maybe it is a UFA signing or a trade. Who really knows? But, that's, we'll talk more about that as we go into next week's shows of, free agency. But right now, the next big thing to happen is the draft. And I'm curious to see what the Hurricanes are going to do there with 4 draft picks. Like I said, as of, right now on Monday, you'll know either before or after it happens if Rod Brind'Amour makes the Hall of Fame. And then we're talking next Wednesday is free agency day. So a very big quick turnaround. We had all last week to celebrate the Hurricanes win the Cup, had the parade on Saturday. Now we have this, small lead up of 4 days until the start of the draft. And then not that much longer after the draft, you're talking another 4 days until the free agency period. Then it's just, however many days it takes until you learn of like who's going where and stuff like that. And how active are the Hurricanes going to be? That's going to be the biggest question, but we'll definitely jump into that once we get closer to all those things. But for right now, Parade's done. Super fun. Nic Deslauriers is going to be Carolina Hurricane for another couple of more years. And now focus the shifts to the draft and free agency and a start of a new league cycle on July 1st for the NHL. But until all of that, guys, this will be the Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Thank you for making your first listen of the day. If you've never missed an episode, well, the David Club's built for you. Get Locked On Hurricanes ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to the link in the show notes or the description to join the club today. It's $5 a month, $50 for an entire year. Make sure to take advantage of our 7-day free trial. For those of you on video, we send you the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure to make your second listen to NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL. If you want to keep up with me, I'm One True Zach on X. The podcast is L_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky, the Zachary Martin, where if you click link tree in my bios, you can find all my written content at thehockeyriders.com. I'm putting out so much stuff recently. We're talking about 3 stars of the Stanley Cup, the whole journey through the playoffs for the Hurricanes. We're talking about the actual parade itself, quotes from Aho and Brind'Amour after the parade and following the rally, and just talk about the Nic Deslauriers extension. A lot of stuff over at thehockeyriders.com. Make sure to go check that out. You can listen to the show on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your podcast. Make sure to leave a 5-star rating and a review. On YouTube, it's Locked On Hurricanes. Subscribe, hit the bell notification so you don't miss the show. Hit the thumbs up, tell me know if you like the show as well. Share with other Caniacs, become everydayers just like you. But hope everyone enjoyed the Monday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Enjoy your Monday, and until next time, as always, let's go Canes.